they don't put enough money in the business. They try to take everything off the table, because these quote unquote gurus out there say like your business could end tomorrow and like you need to take everything off the table and never reinvest in your business, and so like their businesses stay stagnant.
Welcome to another episode of the Tactical Empire. Today we're joined by Riley Trombley. He is our newest addition to the team here at Tactical Empire. So we wanted to bring him on and introduce him to you guys. He has stepped into our Chief Marketing Officer role. I hate roles, but he's going to run our marketing side of things. He is an expert in that field, having built his own business and multiple other businesses for other people. So we're super stoked to have his expertise. And also I of course am excited about what he's going to do behind the scenes for our business, but more importantly, I'm excited about his ability to lend his expertise to the guys in our inner circle, and his level of oversight and just having some eyeballs on what the people are doing in the group, because I think it's super important for the guys, especially the ones that own businesses, to figure out what they're doing with their messaging, with their CRMs, how they're speaking to their customers, what their branding looks like. I mean, we talk about personal branding extensively in here, but also there's a lot to be said about messaging, email marketing, and all these other things that Riley's an expert in, that he can provide feedback to our guys for and put some more money in their pockets pretty quickly. So it's just going to be another kind of tool in our tool belt to educate our community on. And I'm very excited about that. Riley, welcome.
What's going on, man? Thank you, Jeff. Thank you, Shawn. Thanks for having me, guys. Yeah, I've been in the marketing space for, quite arguably, I would say that since I started as a business owner, because we have to market ourselves. But little did I know that was going to be the main arm that I would need to grow that type of business. And that was the fitness industry. And I've helped with many other different industries, from both franchise levels to corporate levels to independent mom and pop style businesses. But I also help with mentoring our guys through any issues that they have, like seeing a lot of email issues lately with people in their lists. And I would say that for those people that are listening, that's a low-hanging fruit for a lot of us, because ad costs are rising consistently. It is costly, more and more expensive to get new eyeballs to look at your stuff. And so we should be prioritizing our list. And I have a 3-method approach for that, breaking down traffic into different segments or different buckets. But yeah, I'm here to help. I'm really excited about TE and you guys are both great entrepreneurs, great leaders of the community. And I'm honored to be here and be able to play a small part in that. So.
Well, let's dive into that, because like you presented to our guys in Little Rock and obviously showed your depth of knowledge, but just so the people can hear you speak more on what your specialty with is, like, if someone hired you to look at their service-based business, what buckets are you looking at? You said you drop things into 3 buckets, and what are they? Why are they that way? And how do you go about approaching that when you're talking with business owners in line of prioritization, if you do prioritize which bucket comes first?
Usually when I'm meeting with any kind of business, we always were able to dissect things into 3 different issues when it comes to growth, right? So like, obviously there's 2 direct ways that we grow a business. There's getting more customers, and then there's making more from those customers. Now there's indirect ways of growth, which is just making sure that they're repeat buyers and they're recurring month over month over month, right? But the 2 direct ways that we influence growth, the only 2 direct ways, are by getting new customers coming in, traffic coming in, generating those people in through new sales, and then also increasing the value and moving people up our value ladder. So when I'm talking to a new business and they're like, "Hey, Riley, I just need to grow," I ask them one clarifying question, is really just like, where are we at, right? When it comes to our finances, because a lot of people, they don't know, like they chalk it up with like, "Hey, I need more leads." Well, like, it's always greater depth than that. It doesn't matter what the business is. They all have shit, sorry for my language, but they all have their crap. Like but it can all be summed into like, where are you at financially? And so normally the one that I usually get is like, I'm struggling to keep the lights on. And so, or like struggling to pay the bills, which just shows me that we have bumpy revenue without even seeing any kind of graphs, which means that we need a continuity offer. We need something that's going to get people build month over month, and we need to be putting something out there that's going to feed into continuity. So when that's just like kind of getting ahead of ourselves, but like it can be chalked up into we need a lead generation offer, we need a continuity offer, we need a high ticket offer. And the best way that I've been able to like summarize that with most people is like if someone came up to me, for instance, this one doesn't happen as often as I would think it would for people that say I need more leads, right? And so when people come to me, for instance, and if they're like, "Hey, Riley, like I have this great product. I need help selling it." Well, okay. The first thing I'm like, okay, well, like, how big's our list? And what I mean by that is just how many contacts do you own, right? What are your eyeballs, right? And so do I have contact information at my disposal? If I don't, so then we need a lead generation offer. We should be putting something out there free. This could be fragmenting the core offer into little pieces, little tangible pieces that people get a little bit of and they want more of, but then there's a paywall behind getting more of, right? And that's getting people into our ecosystem and then converting them into our list so that we can market to them later. Because the greatest and the cheapest way to generate new sales is always going to be through your owned list because you're not volatile to the rising ad costs. And so you're not having to pay to reintroduce yourself to these people because they've already given you the 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 contact information to say, hey, I want to be more, I want to receive offers from this company, or I want to receive offers from this person. And so like that's lead generation offers. So like if you come to me and you say I have a product or a service but you have nobody to sell to, we need to start with leads. We need to be filling up that list. Now that really doesn't ever stop happening. Like you're always putting out value and generating leads. You should be always filling out your list. However, like when someone comes to me and they have no list at their disposal, that's going to be our first thing is like, hey, how can we fragment what they're already doing by giving people a little bit of a taste in exchange for contact information so we can market them our core offer later on. And then when people are struggling, like the one I get a lot is like paying the bills, especially from like mom and pop shops. But franchise level too. Like don't just think because they're a franchise that they're successful. Like every business has their shit and everybody's going through their stuff. And one that I deal with a lot is people don't know how to manage their finances. And so they don't have a very good way of, retaining members. So recurring is usually an issue for them. And so we put out continuity offers. So like this could be something that's high level, but not as high touch, meaning it's not pulling me in a lot. It really differs by the business, right? Obviously. But if I'm like you guys, a coaching business, we could go as high as saying like, hey, we could fly you out and actually work with these people in their business at like with them in their business, sleep at their house, get them up, get them to work out, whatever. But like you trying to swallow that, be like, well, I'd have to get like $100,000 a month to be able to do something like that. And so like we work backwards from that. So like, what is something that we could easily digest, but continually offer in a continuity offer? And so like, that's just, we build something so great. And then we're like, okay, what's actually something we can actually digest and do? And that usually will get us in the right direction of a continuity offer. And then we just present it to our list first before we start going into any kind of paid channels or organic methods. Just because ideally people that are a warmer audience, which I'm getting into audience temperature now, kind of getting ahead of myself, but the best way to put an offer out there is always to your list because they know who you are, right? These are the warmest touch people that haven't bought from you yet, but they are aware who you are. So if you could present something to them and it gets traction, oftentimes it will then perform best on social media. And then if you get hooks and something and it's like you get your hooks right and the content right and it starts generating new leads and new interest from a colder audience, like your organic traffic, then I would start really starting to put those hooks into paid ads. And that's where you really get that scale. And that's continuity offers. And then obviously you got high ticket offers. So these are like people coming to me and saying, hey, I want to build a second location, or I want to get additional funds going into a slow season, or, for gyms, especially like high ticket offerings going into the summer and winter months. Like those are the dreaded churn months for gyms. And so I know that you own a gym, Shawn. So like those are the biggest ones for that time of year is running a high ticket offer around that, paid in fulls, those kind of things to try to get some additional cash coming in. So we have the reserves going into the slow season, or we have, cash at our disposal to do different things within the business that's needed. So kind of went all over the place as far as that goes, but it really can be chalked up with lead generation offers, continuity offers, or high ticket offers. And every single problem in a business can always be chalked up to that. And at the men's meetup, I arguably said that you guys were an offer to your wife. Like everybody's an offer. So like everything you do is an offer. When you make offers to employees, like everything builds around offers. And that's what I spoke up at the event. But really every issue in a business can always be chalked up into one of those three buckets. And then once we get that right, then we can get the offer right. And once we get the offer right, then we can start moving on traffic. And once we We identify where our traffic, where our low hanging fruit is within traffic. We start there, and then we start to optimize the other areas as we start to scale. So that's that's sorry, that's it in a big nutshell.
It's all good. I mean, you're hitting the nail on the head for what we see with businesses, and how we've seen you help a lot of others, and how you're helping the Tactical Empire. We work with a lot of entrepreneurs or people that help make decisions at other businesses as an employee and investors. And so I want, as someone who's worked with small businesses, I want you to describe the ideal person that you work with from an entrepreneur standpoint. So what I'm getting at is the people that you have enjoyed working with the most or have gotten the best results, or a mix of those two. Describe that type of person with me, because I want the audience to see if they fit the bill on the type of person that thinks and takes action in the way that they need to in order to be successful.
To simply put, because I've met with a lot of people, I don't take on a lot of people, but I meet with a lot of people, is one person that doesn't put a budget on their marketing. Quite simply put that way. Like someone that doesn't look at the line item on their marketing as a budget item, because it's not. Like, how does a business survive? It needs cash. So if cash flow is the lifeblood of the business, why would you constrict your lifeblood if things are working well, right? Like I've worked with, especially early on when I started getting into the agency game, which was by happenstance. It wasn't necessarily something I thought I was going to end up doing. When I started helping more people and started getting paid for it, that's what I started to realize is when we got to a certain level of scale where it's like, hey, let's hit the gas. Like, this is working. Let's go. It's kind of like, oh, I only allocated like $2,000 towards my paid marketing. I was like, it's working. Look at your costs, your lead costs. Like, our conversions are fantastic. What are you doing? Like, let's go. But trying to like arm wrestle them to like spend more to get more, it's ridiculous. And so I would say there's like definitely that's like a major thing is like, if you come to me and you say, well, like, this is all I'm willing to allocate towards my marketing, you're like, you have the wrong idea of how a business should be running, because you always going to need customers. And especially in the world that we're going into with like the transition to AI, and where people are going to be getting more capital at their disposal because they'll be able to, we all have those employees that come in and they're like, I'm just here for a paycheck, right? Or we know people that are like that. Well, AI is going to come in and it's going to replace those people. And so when that happens and we no longer have that person's paycheck on our books, we're now going to have more cash flow coming into the business, and we have opportunity to do that. So with that additional margin, a good business owner is going to put that into their marketing efforts to make their competitors obsolete, right? Like, people come into business way too nice, in my opinion, and it's like, it is competitive as hell. And so like, if you come into it with like, hey, I'm only willing to spend this much on my marketing efforts, I'm like, okay, well, you're only willing to grow to that level while your competitors like finding ways to try to steal money or steal food off your table. Like, because if they were given the opportunity, they would make sure that they took everything from you, because that's the mindset that they have. And so if you're not playing like that, I mean, when people answer or give me the answer, like, this is what my marketing budget is, I immediately know that they're not an aggressive business owner, and they're not somebody that's like, or they don't have the right hat on, right? Or they haven't been burned or what have you. Like, I think that that's the simple answer is just, if you have a marketing budget, especially when things are working and you're not willing to grow beyond that point, then I think there's a greater discussion at play than hiring an agency to do your growth for you.
I think the issue people have with that, and it was where they put on a line item of like, let's say I'm going to spend 5 grand a month on marketing. I think the reason that people come into that game capped is because of negative experiences in the marketing space. I mean, I've been in the game long enough that I know I've fucking lit money on fire with marketing agencies, marketing people that didn't provide the perceived ROI, or the, I guess, real ROI. So while I understand that, I don't think it's a mindset issue where they're, until they've been working with you for like 3 to 6 months and there's been proof in the pudding. I don't know that it is a definition of how they operate as a business owner. I think they're just more cautious on the way in, because I mean, let's be honest, there's agencies out there that'll spend your ass into bankruptcy, and if you just give them an unlimited budget. So, I mean, from the guys that we work with more than anything, it's a matter of understanding if you put $1 in, if $2 come out, you should do that into infinity. And I think most people do understand that if it's explained to them that way and they see it. But I think what most people have an experience of is where they put $5 in and they get $1 back. And how long can they hold out on that long tail experience financially?
So that is a very great point. And so when you put it that way, if you were to give somebody like a temperature check, if they're looking for agencies, because this agencies, like it's a dark world, and a lot of them suck. And so
That's my
there's this
point.
balance that has to be there's this balance that has to be made. If I'm a business owner looking for an agency, I need to sit back and really assess, am I coming from an emotional stance? Because an agency is going to capitalize on that. If you start using words like speed and you start using words like I need it today, or I don't know if I'm going to pay my mortgage next month, they're going to feed into that by saying, hey, we need to go aggressive on paid marketing. But I will, let me leverage what we're doing with you guys right now. Have I talked about paid marketing really at all other than our retargeting efforts? Or am I
No, because
taking a
I told
more
you
free what?
I told you flat out that our foundation was not in place to do that. The system is broken on the back end.
Exactly. But like I didn't come into it saying, hey Jeff, like let's dump money into paid ads because it's like I needed a good foundation, right? The bigger the runway, the larger the plane that could take off. And so we're building you guys a very strong foundation. You had leads to work from. They weren't being spoken with, and we're working those things out right now. But like we didn't take a paid approach, and we're like not everything is a paid approach. And so it's to like to give the business owner some credit, like they're not a marketer, so they don't really understand this world. So what a lot of us get introduced with is paid advertising because it is quicker. And so like we get that dopamine rush by seeing the leads come in overnight, and like we start to think that this game is just easy. And it's like it's not. Like there's two different ways. You're either putting time in or you're putting money in. Like that's really all it can be chalked up to. If you're putting time in, then it's putting out time of valuable content by really understanding who it is that you serve so that it can resonate with them so that they will be more interested in getting some of your stuff. And if you don't have leads, then that's free stuff that you're presenting in the beginning. And so like getting that contact information, that's really what it is. I put the time in for valuable content without putting the money in, but then I really understand my avatar at such a great level, an intimate level, that eventually when I say, hey, I got this free thing, they're going to be interested. And then they become warmer traffic and they get on my list where I can actually talk to them and have conversations and eventually convert them into a high ticket or a continuity offer. Right. And so that's how the money wheel will go on the free side. But if I'm going for the paid side, you better be at a level that you understand your avatar. Because if you just give all the power to the agency, they're going to freeball and be like, well, I did this with this other business. You're pretty much kind of like them. Let's try it. And then they're wasting your ads dollars like crazy trying to get an ROI. And then they try to justify it to you by like blanket answers by saying like, hey, like we got a 1 to 5 return on our, or, a 1 to 5 return on our ad spend. Like it's not ideal, but like if you don't know your metrics, you're gonna take whatever they say, right? Like you're
Yep.
gonna be like, oh, okay. And then they're gonna be like, well, we'll get better next month. And then you just keep delaying the inevitable and wasting ads dollars. So business owners should really sit back if you're looking for an agency. Are you coming from an emotional stance? Never go into talking with an agency about speed because they're always going to lean on paid advertising because it is quicker. Like it is much quicker than putting a billboard out there and not knowing what your return is. But like if you don't know your metrics and you don't know what you're doing, you might as well be putting a billboard out there that you have no idea what your return is because you're putting all the power to an agency who's telling you stuff that you don't understand. And then they might just be filling you full of fluff just to make you feel better about the lack of results. And so you really need to understand your metrics. But then you also need to be sitting back and saying, am I coming from an emotional stance? Because if you are, they're going to prey on that. It is a predatory field. Every field in business that I've seen is predatory, but like agencies will really capitalize on it. And agencies routinely have a less than 3 month LTV. There's a reason behind that because a lot of them are not very good. And a lot of them, all they can do is just put out an ad on Facebook and they think that that's where you're going to get the returns. And they just don't have depth in this field. And so I will say the agencies that you haven't heard of are usually the best because they don't have to advertise for new clients. They usually get word of mouth. And, that's the ones that I've seen of, they're not putting themselves out there and really like hammering things hard. The ones that you don't really hear about usually provided the best results, at least in my experience, the ones that I have in my network. Did I answer your question?
Yeah, for sure, man, for sure, for sure. I mean, we've been in the game long enough that you see all this stuff happening, right? And you see the reservations from the business owner on paid marketing. Even if they've got a bunch of money, like we work with roofing and moving companies that have a lot of revenue, and and they're hesitant to even mess with marketing companies because those guys come in and they're like, hey, if you give me 25K a month, I'll do X, Y, and Z for you. And it's just a bunch of empty promises most of the time. But what you said is really good in that the way I perceived it is ultimately it's up to the business owner to raise their level of sophistication and understanding of what they're looking at when it comes to their metrics and how they foundationally grow their business. Because as a thought exercise, if you took away the ability to use paid marketing altogether, how would you market your business? I mean, and ultimately, we should all be able to understand how to organically market our business first and foremost. And then from there, all you're doing is putting gasoline on the engine that you've built. I mean, everything we've done in the Tactical Empire has been organic. Like the gaps we have in our holes are all solely like from a tracking and a metric standpoint and communication with contacts and leads. And so from my perspective, I knew that needed cleaned up first because you can't just run a business from like your Rolodex on your cell phone and trying to remember who you talked to last. And ultimately, that's kind of the direction we had taken, and that doesn't have a consistent and predictable like return of revenue. And ultimately, if we're going to structure what we want to structure here, like I knew that foundationally we needed that repeatable process, and so it was necessary to bring in someone like yourself to build our back end so that we are talking to our contacts, so that the people that are coming into our ecosystem are being communicated with for the long haul. Because if you're aware of what's going on, there's a huge deficit of trust. So like leads need to sit in your ecosystem for much longer. They need to be delivered much more value before they're going to buy from you. There's just a longer client cycle. There's a longer sales cycle than there was 5 years ago or 3 years ago. And so for us, it was necessary to get that stood up because otherwise Shawn and I are just using pure like elbow grease to get it done. Who are the 5 people we're texting today that are in our phones, right?
Exactly. And so essentially what you talked about was just temperature. And so like, and the warmer the lead needs to be will be directly influenced by the temperature, or sorry, the price of what your first value or your core offer is. So like if your first step on your value ladder is like a $5,000 offer, the leads are going to need to be kind of warmed up, right? Because they're not going to be interested in taking up an offer like that. They just be red hot, right? Imagine what would it take for you to drop $5,000 on something. So you must have been like, you would have to take in a ton of different value in different areas. It would have to provide you a tremendous value depending on what the avatar is. Like if you're a middle class person, you're making $100,000 within the household, like $5,000 is a big hit on you for any kind of program on the value ladder. But if that's who you're serving, those leads need to be red hot. And then on the other side, if you're giving something more free, they don't need to be super warmed up. And so like, it's just temperature and manipulating that temperature. But the idea really is, if I have all these eyeballs, I need to bring them onto my list so that they're just hearing from me. And I can shut out all the noise, where I can directly just talk to these people through email and SMS and really get those conversations going and providing value independent of where they are by, segmenting the list and talking to them differently and getting really personalized, and then personalizing offers to them to get them to take that next step in the journey and become more warmed up, and essentially get them to solving that issue, which is within the business, which is, are we continuity? Are we high ticket? Like whatever it may be. But I love that you talked about that, because that's temperature. And a lot of people don't understand with temperature. They try to put, within a cold audience, they try to put an offer out there as if the whole world knows who you are. And that's not the case.
For sure.
Outside of budgeting and the view of money with marketing, when you said that you see entrepreneurs that are not good with finances, what do you mean by that? Obviously, that's something that Jeff and I kind of hang our hat on in helping people with personal and business finances. What do you see? What have you seen?
They don't put enough money in the business. They try to take everything off the table. Like, because, these quote unquote gurus out there say like your business could end tomorrow and like you need to take everything off the table, and never reinvest in your business. And so like their businesses stay stagnant. So and I was one of those people. I was one person I was like talked into within groups that I've been in. They're like, hey, you need to be taking more off the table, when I was constantly reinvesting in the business. But then when I looked at like where growth was happening within my business, it was growing where it was getting attention and getting cash flow put back into, upscaling my team and putting more towards marketing efforts and distributing through different channels and upgrading our facility, upgrading our equipment, like that kind of stuff. I think that there's not enough balance there. I would definitely say that I've seen that a lot, more on the personal side, more and franchise level than really like. I mean, I'm not really introduced to the financials on like the corporate levels and stuff like that because they play kind of a different game. When it comes to like the franchise level or the independent operators, that's a big thing that I see is like not enough reinvestment into their growth strategy. It's kind of just always hovered around, I'm only willing to allocate this much regardless of how much my revenue marker increases. And so like as far as finances go, that's what I would definitely say. Yeah, I would say that without like, I mean, I'm not a CPA, but that's what I would see from a marketing standpoint. It's just not enough money allocated towards growth, even when the business is growing.
Let's go around the table. Jeff, what do you see people and money in business?
Man, you hit me quick. I think the number one thing that most people do is that they don't really keep track of their numbers and they don't have a system set up for how money needs to move and flow within their business. I mean, fuck, let's look at profit first. Super simple system, right? Like almost like second grade level. And that's not to take anything away from Mike McAlowitz because it fucking works. I recommend profit first to everybody that doesn't have a good handle on what they're doing. And there's time in the future of building your business to get more sophisticated with the accounting system you're trying to implement, but profit first works. And ultimately, I think that, I mean, everybody starts from a position. I think most people start from a position of like top level accounting, right? Like you've got X number amount of money in the bank and you spend it on shit that you think it needs spent for. And then you get it because there's no forecasting to it. And that's why profit first is so simple because you sweep them away and then the money just sits in like 5 or 6 accounts and then it's there when you need it for like when the rainy day comes or whatever, where everybody does cash flow accounting or whatever straight from the top line. Everything sits in one single account and then you think you've got 20,000 extra dollars in there and you write yourself a dividend check and then the tax bill hits the next day for $21,000 and you got to write the check back to the business or whatever. So I just think this is really important in scale too, because you can move too fast to try to grow on multiple fronts. I mean, this is something that we're dealing with some of our accelerator clients right now. And if you get out ahead of yourself too quickly, you're going to be fighting fires on 5 different fronts and you'll be undercapitalized to handle those losses. And that's where Riley talks about enterprise value and reinvesting in your business. Before you look at scale, you have to consider all the aspects of that, of the overhead costs to grow and scale, and then the headaches that come with it. And do you have the company culture and the leadership abilities to manage that growth, especially when you're talking about moving out to regions and going into different areas?
That's a great point.
I like all that. And I think that covers a lot of it. All I'll say is I think some of that revolves around just respect and respect of money. The amount of business owners that I've worked with over the years and, through the Tactical Empire, I mean, the biggest wins come from when we literally just show them the money. Jeff kind of said about not having a good system or not actually having eyeballs on it. The second they get eyeballs on it, before they get the respect, they actually have a very visceral, like disgusting feeling. The amount of entrepreneurial men that have told me they have felt literally sick after just looking at a bank statement when I told them to, and see how much money they've spent on business meals in 30 days is absurd. I mean, they're spending the amount that they probably pay in a home mortgage on meals because they are just so busy or they don't want to like make a meal. And I get it. If you make a lot of money, paying $20 for a meal for lunch is you're losing money at that point if you're cooking your own meals. But most of these guys are not in that position. The dollars matter, the $1,000 here, the $2,000 here, and there matters most. So I just want to see if we had a twist on what we've seen. So I think that's what we help with our flagship product, the 7 levels of financial freedom. We're giving our money a job, a system to flow through, and turn that system into a cash flow system, a velocity of money system. Riley, let's talk about before you met. Jeff was primarily your mentor. I mean, I talked to you a little bit back in the day. Before working with Jeff or Jeff and I, what changed in your entrepreneurial ventures? What lessons did you learn from us that have positively impacted your business and how you go about living your life?
Well, I will say from a financial standpoint, I have you to thank for that. Jeff planted the seed by talking about it. I think he was, when I was first introduced to like when you were talking about finances and stuff and like the infinite banking I don't think you guys were using that. I think you guys were just talking about high early cash value, like life insurance. I think Jeff was honestly pushing you towards it because when you worked with me within the group that we were a part of early on, I remember you speaking about that, like you were in that journey and you were working with Jeff and you were currently doing those things. And I was like, hey, I'm not there yet right now. Kind of we pushed it off. But as far as from a financial standpoint and being able to like, when you touched about the 7 levels of financial freedom, obviously the infinite banking concept is in there with that. I have you to thank for that because you planted that seed in my head like 3 years ago where you were talking about your returns and just how you were using it for your system and funded your franchise and the things that you've done within your real estate investments and stuff like that. So I have you to thank for that. But as far as like with Jeff is great about operationalizing things and giving you a journey about consuming things and not just feeling like you're overwhelmed with the amount of stuff that you have to do all at once. He's very good at tactically, no pun intended, putting things in a process that allows me to like digestibly take the next step in the journey that I'm supposed to take for the goals that I had. So there was a brief hiatus from working with you guys. And when I came back into the Tactical Empire group, it was even more clear from where I was at the direction that I needed to go. And Jeff helped me get clear on the path and move forward with that and just keep leaning on the things that I'm really good at and not necessarily stress about the things that I'm not good at. And then obviously with the infinite banking that I took from you, Shawn, that's just something that you don't really have to pay too much attention to, but still getting that train rolling, and we're on year 3 now. So.
Love it.
What have you used your system for?
Well, I mean, my wife and I bought a Dairy Queen franchise. So like that was kind of like on a whim. That was not within like our buy box or anything that we didn't really know what we were going to do. Honestly, before we even talked about doing the DQ thing, which was on a whim, I was talking about Jeff about like, I didn't really know which direction I wanted to go in with my investments. I talked about like burning properties and he was like, well, do you like rehabbing stuff? And it was just like, I didn't know where to go. I was sitting on cash. I didn't know really what to do. My bank was full. It was just sitting there, and didn't really know what to do with it. And so my wife and I, we always go to DQ every Friday. We take our kids to go get ice cream. And that's what we did. And there was a sign on the door that said for sale from owners. And I made a joke. I got back in the car and I was like, hey, what if we bought a DQ? And my wife just looked at me and laughed. And she's like, what are you talking about? And I was like, it's for sale. And she's like, no, it's not. And I was like, it really is. And so it's been around our town for 16 years now. But it was the first job my wife had. And so from the original owners. And so we bought it from the original owners that once employed my wife. And it was just a cool opportunity. It was something that was cool to build. So that was what we used it for. I've used it for like remodeling our home. I've used it for growing my agency. I've used it for buying my wife's car, buying my truck. I've used it for a lot of different things. And I love it. I love the flexibility of it. I love not owing a bank, owing myself, and being able to do it in like, for instance, when we bought the franchise, we wrote ourselves a note that just basically said what we're going to be paying plus interest back into our bank from the business. And so like, it's just, and it doesn't stop compounding, right? Like I'm borrowing money from the life insurance business or the life insurance, whatever you call them. But I'm borrowing from them, but my money stays put and it keeps compounding month over month. And it's awesome. It's like, you can't do that with anything else. And so I was so thankful for you guys being introduced to that yourselves and introducing me to it. So that's what I've been able to do.